Monday, September 17th. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geeknights. Tonight, we talk about the business technology disconnect. Semprini.
Let's do this.
It's coming. I don't know if I can contain myself.
Our listeners should be glad it did not come, or else this podcast might not exist in its current fashion.
Might not, probably wouldn't.
Well, we did go to work today wisely. Very wisely.
Yes, I'm very glad that I did not skip work today.
In order to
play a certain game. A game that possibly I have been waiting for a decade, give or take.
I mean, if you waited for anything longer in your entire life.
You know what? No. Nothing in my life have I waited this long for, because Duke Nukem I wasn't actually waiting for. I never believed that game would come out. But this, I mean, I saw the videos. It was like, this game is coming out soon, and that was like 8 years ago.
Yep. But anyway, the point is that we were thinking about, they said the beta version of the game would come out today, and because we pre-ordered, we would get into that beta with, just automatically. But they didn't say what time it would be coming out. And a bunch of people were like, oh, it'll come out at midnight, wherever time zone they happen to live in. And smarter people said, no, it'll come out midnight Valve time, so 3 a.m. Eastern time. And then people said, oh, no, it'll come out later in the day because, they got to work on it and stuff. And then
there's also the chance that it won't come out. But that argument's silly. If they give a date and then they need the extra 8 hours to do something to it, something's wrong.
Yeah, well, currently it is, It
is currently 7:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're recording the show early tonight.
If it's 7:45 here, then it's 4:45 in Valve headquarters. So they got some time before they push the button.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
We will see. I guarantee they'll push the button before midnight Pacific time.
I only give it a 60% chance of it coming out today.
I give it a 90% chance.
Well, considering the track record of Team Fortress 2.
There is a chance that it will come out, though, and there'll be a problem, which is not included in my 90% estimate. For example, it could come out and all the servers will be full of people and no one can play. It could come out and the server won't work. It could come out and no one will have servers set up. It could come out and it doesn't work, period. It could come out and it only works on some systems because it's a beta and it's buggy. There's all sorts of scenarios. But
it could come out and then the load... Well, you know what? I'll bet even right now, the load of kids sitting there reloading Steam constantly.
It could be quite a load. And that brings me to the point I want to make. If you're one of those people who, when something's going to happen on the internet, let's say, I don't know, Engadget is live blogging an Apple press conference, or a game is about to come out, or, any sort of, there is something impending, like there's something about to happen, there is news coming out about it, or something is going to happen sometime, but you're not sure exactly what time.
Yep, like sometime tonight, Nintendo will announce their new game, Semprini.
Right, if you're sitting there reloading the video game website constantly, you're wasting your time.
Well, the thing
shouldn't
is,
do that.
There's always going to be the tier 0 person. The person who is the first one to see the updated Gizness. Gizness?
That's
I think
the
I was
person.
Gonna say Gizmo and Business.
You know who that person is? The blogger who's paid to do it. That's who that person is.
Well, no, it's always some punk kid, but it doesn't matter.
Well, no, there's punk kids who do it too. But for example, you don't have to stay up reading, the Engadget whatever as they update it, live blogging, which I think is pretty stupid, when you could just wait until they're done and then read the whole thing at once. Why waste? You think about how much longer and how much more time you're wasting reloading it constantly.
Yeah,
reading one sentence at a time, and half the time you reload, there isn't even a new sentence to
For
read.
Team Fortress 2, in the time you spend reloading, you could just be playing some other game and practicing.
Yeah, I know. Think about it. Today, if you would have sat there trying to get Team Fortress 2 all day, you would have been reloading for over 12 hours. Constantly, and you would have never gotten anything for your efforts.
I mean, there's the tier 0 person, the person who actually sees the thing, and the tier 1 person is like the blogger who finds out about it, and then it's all over the internet from that.
Yeah, if you're just browsing the web or doing your thing, you sit around waiting, doing something else. When it happens, you'll find out within minutes. You're not going to find out within a second. You'll find out within minutes. And you know what? In the grand scheme, think about this. In those minutes, you didn't get to play the game the first 5 minutes it was out. You played it 10 minutes after it was out. Well, Would you rather play the game 10 minutes after it comes out? Or are you willing to save you're basically, in order to get those 10 minutes of game time into your life, you're going to have to spend like 12 hours not doing anything else.
See, the thing is, it's a hindsight problem in that you can't really know. Like, let's say I would have done the effort if I'd known to get an extra 10 minutes or day or whatever out of Tribes 2.
Yeah.
Because that game, there was a limited amount of time I could have played that game.
I guess.
And it saddens me that there was time in my life when that game was playable and I was not playing it.
Mm-hmm.
That is still, I mean, my brain is kind of a loop, you know what? I was like, Rim's gonna play an FPS, and it goes through this constant loop of what I'm gonna play. And it always starts at, can you play Tribes 2? And the answer is no, and then I move on to another game.
Even if I could play Tribes 2, there was just something about like the first few weeks when the game was brand new and the servers were loaded with a bajillion people, and it was awesome.
We walked around RIT constantly.
All right, we're done with that.
Yeah, suffice to say, we might suddenly stop doing this episode.
Well, no, the message here, because it's Tech Day, the message for Tech Day is don't be a stupid asshole reloading constantly. Just wait. Do something else with your time. You're not missing anything.
In the very least, if you're gonna be reloading, have a Game Boy open.
Yeah, just set an auto
Or
reloader.
play World of Warcraft. You know what? Have the auto reloader and play World of Warcraft fishing or something, and play a Game Boy game.
I'll even go so far as to say playing World of Warcraft is better than reloading something to see if there's an update.
You can do them all at the same time. Right now, in my life, I could be reloading Steam, playing World of Warcraft, playing Final Fantasy Tactics or Pokemon on my Game Boy, and watching an anime.
I guess so, yeah.
You gotta multitask.
Yeah, but reloading is stupid and a waste of time. All right.
So,
News.
Tech Day.
News.
We're not going to cop out with some lame-o tech news roundup, even though...
I think our last tech news roundup was justified.
Well, I think it was. The problem is there's still like 5 or 6 newses I really want to talk about.
All right, well, talk about one of them.
I am going to talk about one of them. So, I'm sure you're all aware that some news came out not too long ago that the new iPods had a problem where, due to something, and this was attributed to such things as evil Apple or some conspiracy or whatever, but I'll get to that, you could no longer use anything but iTunes to update music on your iPod. All the new iPods, at least.
Uh-huh.
And there was a rabble on the internet. Oh, shit, those fuckers. It's all over now. It's ruined. Well, it's been 36 hours since that was announced, and it's been fixed. It's been cracked. It now works on Linux again. I imagine everything's going to be patched shortly.
Let me discuss the technology of what was going on here for a second. Unlike other MP3 players, like, say, for instance, a Sansa or a Kawan, the iPod has an iTunes database on it, right? So, like a Sansa, if you have a Sansa, you just put MP3s on it. And the Sansa looks at its own file system, sort of like when you're on your computer just browsing around folders. It browses around its own folders looking for MP3s and whatever it can find, and it puts them there for you to play. It just finds them. So all you have to do is put files on your Sansa and you're good to go. The iPod, unlike other players, doesn't look to see what files it has. It looks in this database file that it has, and that database file tells it what files are available for playing. That's why if you just use your iPod like a hard drive and put some files on there, you can't actually play them. You need to use iTunes or something to add the files to your iPod and such.
Now, there's a lot of rationale and reasons and speculation as to why exactly Apple does this.
The
real truth is that because of the DRM in iTunes and the fact that they want you to be able to play music that is DRM'd on your iPod, there is a vested interest in them having some measure of control over what goes on and does not go on the iPod.
Actually, that is absolutely surprisingly, the DRM has nothing to do with the iTunes database.
Then what's the rationale
The reason they have the iTunes database is because they are able to store arbitrary metadata about the files that you have on your iPod. That's how that feature where you listen to a podcast, you pause, you sync, you play again on your iTunes, you sync, you go to your iPod, you pick up where you left off. All those sorts of features that they have on there work, and the album, the crazy advanced album art they have and other stuff works because they have a database that allows them to store metadata. That's what allows you to do like the on-the-fly playlists and then sync them up to your iTunes.
So what you're telling me is that all the crazy conspiracy wackos on the internet who tell me that, no, it's all because Apple is evil and DRM and blah, 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 might not be accurate.
I can tell you that it is sucky that the iPod does use a database file to allow you to play files on the iPod in terms of not wanting to use iTunes. However, the only reason that it would not gain them any advantage in terms of digital rights management. The only advantages it would gain them are in terms of adding features to the iPod that I must regretfully admit other players do not have these features, and one of the only ways to get those features would be to implement an equivalent sort of database thing.
Now, the news was that in the new updates and everything, what they did is they had a hash. But it wasn't like hashes per files, it was a hash of the whole database. So basically, if you modified anything in the database at all, put an MP3 file in there or whatever, the hash wouldn't match. So your iPod would just say, oh, I guess I don't have any music.
I'm not sure exactly if it was a hash of the database, but it was a hash nonetheless. And if you wanted to, we know how the iTunes database is structured. And they keep changing it, but it's pretty easy to figure out how it works. And that's why you can use other programs besides iTunes. You can use Winamp or GTKpod or Amarok to manage the files on your iPod and have it work. But they added a hash. Now, a hash is a one-way math. So they create a number based on something, and they put that number there, and then they can use that number to figure out whether your iTunes database is good or bad.
Think of it as like a checksum. It's a thing where you can...
Yeah,
you can calculate this number based on known math from a set of data, and if you know the number, then you can test any set of data and find out with reasonable certainty if it's this exact same set of data.
So this made it very difficult. You couldn't modify the iTunes database and still have it match the number, and you couldn't reverse the number because it's one-way math. It's not like, you could you do, if I do 1 + 1 is 2, right? Now I give you the number 2. Tell me what math I did to come up with the number 2.
It might have been 1.5 plus 0.5.
You don't know, and you need to know those original numbers to get it to work. So
now, of course, one-way math is not absolutely one-way because you can reverse engineer things oftentimes.
Yes, but that's for other reasons other than the math itself.
Well, yeah.
But the point is that because of this one-way math, you couldn't modify the iTunes database and have it work anymore in the new iPods. Well, someone just figured it out, and you can use non-iTunes again. Now, people are saying, it's because Apple doesn't want anyone using non-iTunes, and that may well be.
Yes, because Apple has futzed with the way iTunes sharing and things work in the past, and those futz things have just happened to break a lot of third-party support.
Yep.
Granted, third-party Linuxy types just fix it almost right away every time.
That may be. However, I do want to say that this sort of hashing feature in the iTunes database could have potentially other uses than preventing you from using something besides iTunes. It could support other advanced features. I didn't actually look into great detail to figure out if they are doing anything with it, but there are reasons to do it other than preventing people from using non-iTunes with their iPods.
Well, from what I've read, and these are mostly comments on Slashdot and tech blogs, but a lot of these people seem to have done some research. It looks like it's a hash of either the database or all the data on the iPod or some large chunk.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the only possible use anyone could think of for it is that you could tell if the database were corrupted and flag it as corrupt very quickly.
Oh, that is true. And
however, they could do that anyway, and the performance gain by doing it this way is pretty negligible.
Well, who knows why they decided to do it. We'd have to ask Apple programmers who don't want to talk about anything and not allowed to legally. So, whatever you want to think, because we have no evidence either way. You have no evidence about anything when it comes to Apple and their internal doings or how any of their stuff works. So you can just think whatever you want, and that's what the information is. That's all I can say. All right, so, Tor. I think someone yelled at us for not mentioning Tor specifically during our anonymity episode, even though I basically said everything there was to say about Tor other than the word Tor.
Tor is basically a system. We're not going to talk about the tech at all, but it's a system whereby you can connect to this network and have traffic routed through it such that you can effectively be absolutely anonymous.
Right, so there would be a server out there with an IP address, and like a million people are using that server, And now, you visit a website, they think that server visited the website. You download some prawn, they think that server downloaded the prawn.
It's a little more complicated than that, and there's a lot you're hopping around, and we're not going to get into all that, but it's a system whereby as long as you buy into the system, then you can benefit
and
from
the system is trustworthy, and the people running it are trustworthy.
And Tor technologically seems to be fairly trustworthy.
It is.
The side effect of that is it's oftentimes slow.
Yep. The thing with happened here is some guy in Germany was running a Tor server. This server, of course, had a lot of people using it. So basically, you have a computer, and as far as the internet is concerned, there's like 1 million people's worth of internet traffic all coming from this one IP address. This IP address is visiting like 1,000 websites simultaneously, and it's downloading 100 MP3s simultaneously, and God knows what. In Germany, many things are illegal that should not be because Germans hate freedom. And someone in Germany, well, this I agree should be illegal. They posted a bomb threat on something.
All right.
It should be illegal. You shouldn't be allowed to post bomb threats.
Well, yeah, you know what? It already is illegal.
I know. But that's fine. But they do hate freedom in Germany, regardless. And they traced that back to the Tor server. And, of course, someone who posted the bomb threat was smart, I guess, from a technology standpoint, and used Tor so that they couldn't be traced. And I bet they probably still don't know who posted the bomb.
And you know what? They're never going to know because Tor is pretty good.
Yep. The guy who's running the Tor server was arrested.
Now, this bothers me. I mean, it's a tricky issue because on one hand, I think anyone can see the value of a trustworthy law enforcement agency being able to track down the source of any communication, especially in the case of a threat or something like that, or something actually clearly illegal where no one would object to it.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, why don't citizens have a right to facilitate other people being anonymous? I mean, I don't want to be hyperbolic here, but making it illegal to run a Tor server or arresting someone who runs a Tor server is not much different than arresting people who sell masks or arresting someone who agrees that any mail they get, they'll just mail to someone else.
Yes, I must say there is definitely a problem, and I think, I'll tell you what side of this I'm on, is in that people outlaw things that are wrong. Like, we're outlawing murder. Or outlawing robbery.
Yes,
we're outlawing stabbing, right?
Even if you're a libertarian, I think you can agree that, yes, I think as a society, we're not going to let people murder.
We're outlawing child porn.
Yes.
But then people want to outlaw the tools that are used to, commit these crimes. And, in some cases, such as the kitchen knife, where a device, is used by so many people that they're unwilling to give it up and such, it'll cause a problem if they outlaw it. They don't outlaw it. But on the other hand, some devices, if they're, or items, physical goods, if they're less popular,
say lockpicks or... Because a lot of states in the U.S. at least restrict the ownership of certain kinds of lockpicks.
Yeah.
Even though I can make those lockpicks.
I know. And they outlaw items that could potentially be used for crimes, even if they have also non-criminal uses that are useful. I mean, if there was an item that had no non-criminal uses, such as, I don't know...
You know what?
A bank robbing machine... I think I could deal with outlawing the bank robbing machine that had no other use whatsoever.
But what if someone planted a bomb in the money bags in a bank, and the bank robbing machine could then be used to safely get all the money with the bombs out of the way?
I'm saying, hypothetically, if the bank robbing machine had no other uses, like in that situation, it would just get the money and leave and leaving the bomb.
Let's go one step further and go do the opposite. There is nothing in this studio right here, right now, anywhere we can reach or see that could not be used to commit a crime.
I guess you could use just about anything in some way to help you commit a crime.
I could garrot someone with my
especially if your name
honor
is
cord.
MacGyver.
I could hit you over the head with the Morans. I could infringe on copyrights with my computer.
Yes, and I really do not think that it should be illegal to sell or make almost anything or use almost anything in a non-criminal way. I mean, I guess maybe poison gas you probably shouldn't have in your house.
Well, yeah, when it comes to physical things like weapons, I think there are a lot more justifiable reasons. But when it comes to any sort of computer device, that's such an ephemeral world, and it's one of those, we don't understand it.
If something has even one legitimate use, I don't think it's right to say you can't have that. Now, let me finish the details of the story. the guy basically, we didn't know he was arrested until all the charges were dropped and he was able to talk about it. But basically what happened is he went and he was explaining to the police about Tor, and they didn't get it. And then some people had to come and explain it. And they sort of said, oh, we made a mistake, and they let him go.
Now, this seems to happen a lot.
Not only that, but the whole time, they never took down the Tor server or anything. They just knew that guy was associated with that server, and they got him.
Oh.
Never touching the server.
Wow.
I guess that shows their incompetence.
That's the exact opposite of the U.S., where if they suspect you of something, they pretty much
I think the server was far away somewhere.
Oh, they probably just couldn't find it.
Who knows?
But seriously, in the U.S., I don't know all you non-USians, but if you are even suspected of a computer crime of any kind...
You're suspected of a crime of any kind, and they get a warrant to come into your house, and they see computers, they take them.
They'll pretty much take all your computers, and oftentimes you just will never see them again.
Yeah. If you are any sort of criminal where they get to go into your house and, raid it...
Even if you're not a criminal...
They take all computer stuff. Absolutely everything, because they just love finding evidence on your computer.
That's why you have a Bluetooth or wireless SAN that's hidden in the ducts.
Or that's why you just encrypt your hard drive. And
No, because I don't care if they, oh no, they're going to get my data. They see that I look at deviant something porn and I visit, I don't know, bad websites like FARC. But I don't want to lose my data. So if I have a wireless SAN, I don't care if they see what I had. I just don't want them to take it and not give it back.
Oh, but see, you know what they do when you when they come to get you? Most of the time, all the police, at least untrained, untechnical police in this country, I've looked into what they do when they're doing investigations. They have this program called InCase, which is,
isn't that the thing that only runs in Windows?
No. It's a program that has been held up, in the court of law in the United States. So evidence collected by InCase is admissible in court. And all it does is look at your hard drive on the bit level. It understands a bunch of different types of file systems, and it collects all the files it can find on your, reading your hard drive sort of at the lowest level. It sort of tries to reconstruct your file systems, figure out what kind they are, and pick out whatever files it can possibly find.
Granted, there are a lot of ways around that, like deniable encryption.
Yes, but that's all they can do. They don't, they very few police, other than, I guess, some high-level FBI type people, will be intelligent enough or have the training enough to do any other sort of investigation. So if you had a wireless SAN in your ducts and you didn't have a hard drive in your computer, they would run their InCase. They'd be like, hey, there's no hard drives.
What'd you do with the hard drives? They'd probably accuse you of tampering with the evidence.
Yeah, they wouldn't have a fuck clue what to do.
That's why what you do is you have a dummy hard drive with Windows 95 and, some spyware, and that's it.
Yeah.
And then your defense is the spyware did it, and meanwhile your SAN full of wares is just fine in the ducts.
That's a good way to go.
Anyway, we're not here to tell you exactly how to break the law and get away with it. That's for another Monday show. I don't know. It seems like a lower level issue is that, and this happens all over the world now, there are encounters between citizens of countries and law enforcement where law enforcement either are ignorant of the law or ignorant of the crime. And as a result, when in doubt, they really can't do anything but arrest people, and it just causes trouble.
I think the problem is if they really stood by innocent until proven guilty, when in doubt, you don't arrest people.
Well, the problem is, now, I'm not arguing either way. I'm just pointing out, I think the real problem there is that innocent until proven guilty or innocent beyond a reasonable doubt, when it comes to technology and things on the internet, I can say as a technology expert, I think Scott will agree, that situations where there isn't a reasonable doubt practically don't exist. Because there are so many ways that someone else could have committed any computer crime. And there's almost no way to prove that you did jack or shit on the internet.
Unless you have physical evidence, like a camera videotaping me at a computer in a building I broke into, typing away.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to get away with something...
Or in my possession, files on disks that contain illegal things that I definitely put there because,
But you have to have physical evidence that you put them there because you can't prove that, the computer might have been compromised.
Well, it could have been, on a non-networked machine in my house, a CD-ROM.
Your fingerprints are on the CD-ROM.
Something like that.
But, I mean, technology things like the RIAA, now that everyone's fighting the lawsuits, it's turning out that, wait a minute, they can't prove at all that anyone did anything because all they have to go on is an IP address. And
If all your evidence is electronic, there is always reasonable doubt. You might as well just not even go to trial.
I think the only exception to that is certain kinds of data that are signed cryptographically.
Yeah, just about. In which case, you have no evidence because you can't decrypt it.
Well, maybe if a conversation were signed, and you can then say, beyond a reasonable doubt, that person X sent this data to person Y.
I guess,
These two people communicated this much data. We can't say more than that, but we know that fact.
Yep, you could do that.
Right. It's time for Semprini of the Day!
All right, that's not going to go and stop it.
What?
It's no good.
I believe you started it.
I didn't start it.
Right.
Some
Anyway.
guys in like the 70s started.
So, I remember a while ago we talked about as the thing of the day, some of those old Flash videos.
Incredibly old school beats.
But you know, those old kind of pre-meme, like before or around the time of all your base Flash videos, like Coin Bad or Hyakugo Juichi.
Did we ever do Coin Bird?
Yes, I did Coin Bird.
Oh, okay.
I did Coin Bird as an example of those things gone horribly wrong.
All right.
But I think Hyakugo
Angry for
Juichi
coins?
is the most well-known. That's the one with the Pokemons and the dead hobo in the room and Colin Mockery and Pee Wee Herman.
Yeah.
Well, right around that time, possibly a little bit before, I don't remember exactly, there was another one that was commonly known to as Hat Baby. And the URL, which is gone now, was
Rim was talking about it, and I forgot it, but I watched a bit of it today, and I remembered it.
Now,
It came back.
this is really old and poorly done, but now that I know the whole story, it's actually a lot more interesting than you would have thought.
I'll tell the story.
Well, the original URL was cum.to/Hatton.
Oh, I remember now, yeah.
Yeah, and this is one of those things where like people would pass links around like, hey, check this out, Zombocom. Oh, man, well, I'll trade you back. Check out this thing, cum2.Hatton. Well, the video doesn't make any sense. It's basically a bunch of poorly pixelated people with a hat that kind of moves from person to person and this happy old guy. And the song is spelled out phonetically with fake subtitles, but unlike Hyakugo Juichi, it's gibberish. Well, it's not actually gibberish, it's Swedish. You see, apparently in 1984, in Lebanon, someone recorded a song called Habi Tik for the wedding of the daughter of one of his friends, and it's sung in Arabic. I'm paraphrasing from the website here. In 1984 plus, aka 1985, in Sweden, a UN officer named Nyberg got a cassette of this music, brought it back to Sweden, and gave it to his son Patrick. So in the 90s, Patrick and his friends were drunk, and they realized that the name of the song, Habitik, sounds kind of like the translated Habib is singing in Swedish. And a lot of the words in the song, if sounded phonetically, kind of sound like things from a popular drinking song in Sweden that involves a hat.
Uh-huh.
So someone made an MP3 Flash combination, and among all the people in Sweden, this was like the funniest thing ever.
I imagine if I was Swedish and I was familiar with the song and the drinking game, it would be the funniest thing ever.
So it came to the US and people found it, and they still thought it was funny, but just because they thought it was weird.
The same way Ayakuichi was funny.
Yeah, it's Hyakugo Juichi. It's
Whatever.
Japanese.
Whatever. The point is...
Actually, I had no idea what that word was for like 5 years until Emily told me.
The point is that...
The point is that, well, the real point, the thing of the day is not just, oh, here's the history of Hat Baby, and oh, here's an archive of Hat Baby, where you can watch it. I'll warn you, it's pretty bad. Someone made this website that explains the entire history of this with translations, explanations, pictures, screenshots, the whole deal. Mad props to this person for tracking down all this information.
It could just be made up.
I'm reasonably certain that this is true. I validated it from numerous sources. I looked at other people who have translated the song and gotten similar results.
Oh, okay then.
Yeah.
Sure. Whatever. All right, so... my thing of the day, it's a video site, but this video site, the videos aren't really that great. I didn't watch them until today, but they didn't really entertain. However, it is still thing of the day worthy. This site is called IHateYoungPeople.com.
Huh, damn kids, get off my lawn.
And I think the point of this site is they want to get videos of old people complaining about punk kids.
So what, the kids move too quick? I can't see him, can't get him with the shotgun?
Something like that. And there's also a few videos of punk kids complaining about old people. And, generally, old people don't like us punk kids. And they're always complaining, and
I like
they seem to forget when their parents would complain about them, and they're rocking and they're rolling, and now they're complaining about our hippin' and our hoppin' and our video games.
That's something I've never got. And it's happened for as long as we've had civilization. The parents of any generation think that the music of their kids is stupid.
Not just the music, but the entire culture of their kids. They look down on it like it's crap and worthless, and they're like, oh, it's not even music. It's just like their parents said, oh, that rock and roll is not even music. It's just noise.
And you know what? We're seeing the same thing accelerated.
It's like,
I mean,
the thing
how many
is,
Nintendo fanboys look on kids who only have a PS1 or a PS2 as, man, you punk kids don't know anything about video games.
I don't understand, though, because, I look back on the old people and I say, well, there was a culture. And I look at the people younger than me and I said, well, there's a culture. And I don't look on any of it. I don't say, oh, those punk... I don't like the emo music, but I don't say, oh, that's not music. That's not worth having. But... these old people, they had people treating them the same way that they're treating us when they were kids, listening to the rock and roll, and they didn't learn the lesson at all.
Well, what I realized is that
I learned the lesson.
A lot of the complaints that old people were making, just from what you were playing in the background, were kind of weird. Like, young people fill up the train and get in our way and, make it difficult for me to get off the train. I don't think that has anything to do with young people. I think that's just you're too old to be on a train. I think
a lot of things they perceive as being young people is as they get old, you get slower and things happen to you and you're not as able as you were before.
The other half of it
when you see the young people moving the way you moved when you were young, you don't ever think that you're slower. You think they're fast and in the way, whereas actually the problem is that you're slow and old and in the way, and they're trying to get around you because you're holding them up.
The other constant complaint that they kept bringing up was, yeah, these kids with technology, it wasn't even really any specific complaint. It was just, these kids got to stop it with the iPods. And a statement like that doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't make any sense at all.
I can't imagine getting to a point in my life ever where I would stop advancing along with technology, or where I would say, all right, everything made after me is new and crap, and everything made before me is old and crap, and I'm staying right here where I am.
Yep.
How can someone get that way? How can someone just stop trying?
Especially when you're, from a generation that was treated the way they're treating us. It's like they didn't learn. They just kept the same. Anyway, the thing on this site that I find really funny is that they are, not only do they have some videos that they took on the street, obviously, with their own camera, but they're asking for people to submit their own webcam videos complaining about young punk kids. And as of
what old people know how to use a digital camera or YouTube?
And as of right now, there are 3 videos on the site. One of them, I didn't watch any of these, but one of them is titled "I Hate Old People." So of the 3 videos on IHateYoungPeople.com that were webcam videos submitted by users, I think at most 2 of them are actually old people. They don't look that old. They look maybe 30s, 40s, something.
Old people can't make 10 YouTube videos.
It's so funny is that they're asking old people who hate this sort of thing to use this sort of thing to be like young people, to complain about young people.
Maybe it's a trap.
No wonder there's only 3 submissions and one of them is a young guy. It makes what they should have had is they should have had old people send in, friggin' Nickelodeons with, their complaints about young people, just holding up signs in all the pictures in black and white or something. Or maybe send us their Edison wax cylinders with their complaints about young people.
Man, wax cylinders were the business. They're so much crisper than modern CDs and FLAC files.
Tell me about it.
I mean, it's analog, right? So the resolution is infinite.
Okay. Do you want to talk about the show now?
Right.
How much time do we have left?
Speaking of technology, we don't have to go long about this because it's actually a pretty to-the-point issue.
Oh, I got a lot to say, though.
Yeah, I do, too, but most of the things I have to say I could actually break up into much more specific shows.
All right.
The idea is simply that corporations, in particular, partly because of the fact that they outlive the people who form them, and they tend to have kind of a mind of their own, like bureaucracies in any other form, tend to misapply technology and or have problems that could be easily solved with technology that either they don't understand they could be solved, or they do, but they don't know how, and they're unwilling to pay or listen to people who do understand.
Or they don't even realize they have a problem. Or it's basically, the only way to sum it up in a few words is to say companies don't understand technology. And I could just go into just like a million different ways in which they don't understand it. Like, people will have a company and they know they want to get something done with technology, but they'll ask for something that is technologically impossible. Like, I've known 2 or 3 people already who work in like 3D animation modeling companies in some way, and someone will say, make Toy Story for me in like a day or a week. And it's like, okay, you obviously don't understand that takes like $100 million and a giant facility, and it takes a team of like 100 people a few years.
Or people who, in a tech company, here's a good example. Because it's not just, optimistic or stupid possible solutions to things. It's also just not using the tools you have to do a job much more efficiently.
Yeah, it's the exact opposite problem, is they want to use technology so much they want to do something impossible, or there's something very possible and very easy they could do to greatly improve their business, but they don't do it, or don't even think to do it.
You think, we just need to send them to ZomboCon for like 5 minutes. Anything's possible.
Except making Toy Story in a day.
Right. But, here's a good example. At a company I may or may not work for currently, there's a form that is filled out whenever you want to make a new PC. And it says, what image to put on the PC and what applications and what name it's going to get and where it's going to go and who's going to own it and all this business. And it's a digital form that populates the database, and then other applications...
That's pretty advanced. They're actually doing something right.
I know. And that's what bothers me, because they're so close.
Oh, okay.
So then, that form is then used in the back end by people who can, 1, it populates the inventory database, and 2, from there, the people who actually do the imaging get all the information, and the process is semi-automated. So, say this company gets a big contract, and they're going to roll out thousands and thousands of PCs. And say they, due to a weeks-long effort, have compiled a database of all of these PCs that have to be replaced, and everything that needs to go on them. So now, I've got a database of all the PCs that need to be put out.
Yep.
And I've got a separate incompatible database of all the ways to make a PC that'll actually get them made.
So you write a script to read from one and reformat and write to the other.
Or you ask RIM to manually do data entry into the stupid goddamn form in the one database from the other database, because...
Why don't you just write a script?
Because I don't have access to the back ends of either of those databases, and no one hypothetically in this hypothetical company understands that maybe you should have a DBA who could just do this, and then no work needs to be done by RIM.
I could do that with like 2 SQLs and a bash.
I could probably make the point that the billable hours that hypothetically would be spent on this hypothetical project at this hypothetical company by a hypothetical employee named RIM would cost more than hiring a goddamn external consultant to do it.
Yeah. I think the thing is that companies, they either try to get their hands in the technology too much, or they stay away from it too much. This is how, if you're a business person, right, the first thing you need to do is get competent technology people. I know that's difficult if you don't know enough about technology to get good technology people, but let me just tell you this. If you're not able to fire half your company because they've been replaced by computers, then you don't have good technology people.
Yes, that might sound callous, but there are a lot of exceptions to this. But
technology people at companies, it is cruel that, firing people and they lose their jobs because they've been replaced by machines and all that. But regardless of that, when I think about, setting up IT for a company to make their business run better, I think the measure of my success is how many people's jobs I can automate and how much less there is to do because computers do it all. That's what I consider making it better. That's what's supposed to happen.
Yeah. And there are a lot of reasons companies fuck this up.
You can never fire everyone. You're always going to need people to do something.
A lot of times you don't have to fire people. Instead, because you've removed, the bullshit paperwork that, 80% of your employees have to do all the time. Now, all those billable hours can now be spent on your actual company's business, which means you can either fire those people or do a bunch more business.
Yep. But basically what you want to do is first get the good technology people, which might be hard. But once you have good technology people, all you have to do is tell them what you want. So, for example, this is a good idea. Come to Scott and say, hey, Scott, I need a list of this. All right? If you just tell me that, I'll have a list of that in like a second because I just know the command. I just whoop and there it is.
Yep.
Awesome.
Now maybe a technologist, like if you ask me make a Cisco router that does blah, I don't remember all the syntax offhand, but you know what? by 24 hours from now, I've already looked it up and done it.
See, but I think saying is Cisco router does blah is already too deep for them to be telling you.
Well, yeah, true.
You want to say, we need to have these computers, not even that. They want to say, we want to be able to do this.
I think you inadvertently brought up a big issue that the core deal here is not just that they don't understand technology.
Yep.
I think the real problem is that a lot of businesses don't document and don't understand their own business processes on any fundamental level at all. And a lot of people say, oh, like ISO certification, all those things are BS. But a lot of those businessy type certifications, what they really do is come into your company and look, do you have a process, an actual process? As in, could an outside person come in, look at a product, like an input and an output. An input being customer wants X, output being product is shipped to customer. And could they read documentation that would follow the path of that product and all the things that an employee has to do at each step of the way from start to finish?
Yeah, for example, if I came to your factory and I got a job as assembly line guy number 10, is there a piece of paper or a binder of papers that tell me how to do that job? And could I read that binder and then perform that job? Because that should be true of every job. There should be a binder that says how the job is done.
Yes, obviously there are exceptions for highly technical, highly
Well, you
creative.
don't say, well, I mean, for example, for my job, right? You wouldn't say, do this exact thing to do the job.
Well, no, here, let me break it down because I actually deal with this a lot on an enterprise level. What you need to look at is not, what the person does. It's more, what are the inputs and outputs at each stage? And then, can you reduce the number of inputs or can you lessen the impact of these inputs on the person doing the process?
Mm-hmm.
And I could go into stupid, boring detail about it, but a lot of businesses, even very large businesses, and I've worked for a couple of very large companies, and I can say for a fact that a lot of them don't bother with this. Though actually, IBM was really good about it.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't understand your processes, and I mean really understand them, then no amount of technology is going to help you because you're not even going to be able to ask a technologist to do your process.
Yeah.
So forget technology. That's not even the issue. You need to understand what your business does long before you can hire someone like me or Scott to make it go better.
But even then, if you just hire someone like me and you don't even know your process, odds are, if you're like any company I've ever seen, I could just walk in and hang around your business for a few days, probably a few hours, and immediately see things that could be vastly improved by technology.
Oh, yeah. I mean, God, my company now, I'm dead serious, single-handedly revolutionize the way my company works.
Yeah.
And it would be trivial. I wouldn't even need to hire extra people. I could do it in the spare time I have at work now.
Yeah. I go to every place I've worked, I look at the way things are done, and I say, well, if I just did this, this job would take like 10 minutes a day instead of 2 full-time people.
The thing is, though, that sort of argument isn't really feasible because in a large corporation or even a medium-sized one with bureaucracy and with, the businesses running and all that sort of thing, it's not really fair to say, oh, just hire a technologist and they'll fix things for you because while that's kind of true, oftentimes if you do it that way, the solution that is put in won't always be the most documented thing, or more importantly, you won't understand what the person did. So you won't be able to ask him or anyone else how to make it better.
Yep. Also, the thing is that, the only excuse I think, because a lot of people say, the technology fails to help the business to the full potential because the people in the business not understanding, not caring, et cetera, et cetera. But there's only one excuse that I think is the okay excuse for not improving your business with technology to make it, more efficient when possible, and that is profits. Because there are cases where, well, we could do this, and if we did that, it would make all this work easier and such, but that would cost us like $1 bajillion, which we don't have.
For example, say my business process is really dumb, and anyone could do all the steps of the way, and it's super labor intensive. But because anyone can do it, I hire a bunch of nobody replaceable people, and that's a lot cheaper than streamlining the process and hiring competent people.
Yep. Or even just hiring one computer guy who will set up a computer to do the work of these 10 minimum wage people. You think about how much it costs to buy and maintain a machine that flips burgers versus just hiring some teenagers.
Yeah, that's why despite the fact that people say they will be eventually, McDonald's and Burger Kings are not automated in the U.S. because labor, even in a country like this with, inflated standard of living and everything, is so much cheaper than technology for menial jobs.
And then even then, okay, so the machine is cheaper than the employees, right?
I got to maintain the machine.
You got to maintain the machine. Even then, it's still cheaper. You have to pay the guy who maintains the machine.
And
that guy, he's a smart guy, and he needs a lot of money. He's not going to work for the chump change.
But
for that one guy, you could hire like 1,000 burger flipping kids.
But for most companies, especially medium-sized and larger,
companies that have a bunch of people sitting in offices doing paperwork.
If you have more than, say, 100 employees, then I'd say this is almost universally true. If you understand your business process and document it, and then you go to technologists and say, I want to implement this process better, 9 times out of 10, that's going to happen, and your company's going to save so much money you can't even believe it.
At least in the long run. In the short term, you're going to have to spend thousands of dollars on computer equipment. But in the long run, you're going to save so much money on paying people to do crap and wasting time doing crap you were wasting time on before.
Yeah. But I guess I can't stress this enough. The issue is not, people just don't understand technology. The issue is people don't understand their own businesses. Therefore, not understanding technology is not actually hurting them that much.
Y'all, even if they did understand their own business, it's like they can't grasp completely how technology can help them. And to technology people who also don't understand the business, sometimes it's really obvious to us how certain business processes could be extremely streamlined. Like I see people for example, in my job, right? They were faxing in pieces of paper, right? Someone was manually checking over those faxes one at a time and entering them into a spreadsheet, right? So we made a web form, and the people who are sending in the faxes now fill out the web form, which goes directly into the database. And then if they want a report, I push a button and a report comes out. And without someone like me, they wouldn't know that was even possible or an idea or anything.
Yep.
Yet it improves that's now the person who looked over the faxes doesn't have to do that anymore, saving hours and hours of their time.
I guess I should clarify that for a business with very simple or very obvious and trivial business processes, then the business process angle doesn't apply. But for larger companies or companies that have complex business processes, almost no amount of, because, that's the thing. A company that big, they think, we got to be all high tech. So they hire tech people to do tech stuff. But if they don't understand what those tech people actually need to do specifically, at least in terms of the technology needs to have these inputs and these outputs, then the technology is going to fail and not be efficient and cost a lot of money. And then they'll think, those technology people fucked us. And then they won't ever try to increase the technology again in the future.
Well, in many ways, it mirrors, average consumers buying technology at the stores. They don't understand their own needs. They buy things that don't meet their needs or exceed their needs. And they're just not wise when it comes to solving their problems with technology. And that is the one, people think, computer nerds, they know how to make these crazy machines work. Well, we do, but most importantly is we know how the best ways to get the machines to make life easier. And a lot of people don't do that. You see people with their Windows machines full of a bunch of programs everywhere, and it just shows you they have this machine, and they might know how to IM and email and stuff, but they don't know how to do things in a way that significantly increases the productivity in their life or saves them a lot of time.
Yep.
And that's really the purpose of these machines.
That's why there's such a stigma, especially among, I don't want to say older people, because that's a stereotype there's truth in it, but it's definitely not globally true. But people who aren't as familiar with technology tend to look down on technology, saying that it's not actually more efficient, or it's just a time waster, or it's not any better. And a lot of that's just because they don't understand how to use the technology.
Yeah. I mean, my computer...
And a lot of that is that other people don't understand how to use it either, and they see all these people who should know, not knowing, and it's kind of this self-perpetuating stigma.
Yeah, and I think that's really, if you want to get ahead in the technology world, you have to get the skill and the knowledge to know how not just how to use a computer or how to program it or whatever, but how to apply technology to solve problems and make life better for individual people and groups of people in a very significant way, and be able to execute on that.
Yep. And that is where, IT, I'm an IT guy. I'm an IT professional. I've worked at super big corporations. I have a degree. Scott has a degree in computer science. But while I can configure routers and configure switches and write firewall rules, That's not the value of a technologist, because you can hire someone fresh out of...
You can buy a book at Borders.
No, not even that. You can hire some high school kid who got his MSCE and his CDNA who can do those jobs just as well as I can, because it's basically making license plates. It's trivial. Once someone knows the commands to type, the commands don't change. The important part is someone who can look at a business and say, you need this router, and you need these computers and this system. I'll tell you who to hire to make that work, and then that person doesn't have to do anything else. But the person who can go to a business or a person and say, based on what they tell them, and by questioning them and interrogating them, all right, based on what you've told me, I think I have a solution in mind that will meet all of your needs.
Yeah, I can come in, I can set up, a database cluster and a web application and a client-side application. And with that, you should be able to, it'll cost you this much right now, but in another year, it's going to save you this much time and this much money.
Companies need to be willing to hire people who will honestly appraise the situation and just tell them exactly what needs to be done.
And you need to let those people do what they want to do and don't try to mess with them, because they know better than you.
Yeah, it's a matter of translation. It's the person who translates between the business speak, well, I got 40 users and they need to access their web kajiggers. And the IT guy just translates that into Scott speak, which is, all right, I'm going to make a database that does this and put it on this server and do that.
Yep.
I think we're done.
I guess we're just generally pissed off when we see companies, working. We see people going to work, and we see people doing things like using a spreadsheet for a database.
You know what? It's not even just companies.
Having a database and not...
We'll make it up close and personal. Podcasting. This is a podcast, right?
Yep.
And this is no exaggeration. All the people we know who do podcasts, with rare exceptions, in the time it takes them to record, edit, and put up 1 hour's worth of content, we do a whole week.
Yep.
No exaggeration.
None. We do more than a week.
This show will be uploaded and done within 4 minutes of me hitting stop.
Wow. Yeah, and other people, they listen to their entire show and while they edit it that way. So that would at least take us an hour per show. This show's probably over an hour now.
The whole process is automated. Once we're done recording, I click make the show, and then I type upload.py, basically. And I have programs that do all the post-processing. Everything's uploaded. It would take a human hours to do this, but it takes a computer seconds, and that's why computers are great.
And that's why all the people using GarageBand, when they edit their show, they listen to the entire show all the way through.
And that's why I searched on Craigslist for podcast, and I realized that there's a lot of money in consulting for companies who want to do a podcast but don't understand how.
Learn the shit.
Or pay someone who knows. This has been Geeknights with Rim and Scott. Special thanks to DJ Pretzel for the opening music.
Be sure to visit our website at www.frontrowcrew.com, where you'll find show notes, links, our awesome forum, a link to our Frapper map, and links to all the RSS feeds.
We say feeds plural because Geeknights airs 4 nights a week, covering 4 different brands of geekery. Mondays are science and technology. Tuesdays, we have video games, board games, and RPGs. Wednesdays are anime, manga, comic nights. And Thursdays are the catch-alls for various rants and tomfoolery.
You can send us feedback by email to geeknights@frontrowcrew.com. Or you can send audio feedback via Audio. Just click the link that says Send Me an Audio on the right side of our website.
If you like what you hear, you can catch the last 100 episodes in iTunes or in your favorite podcatcher. For the complete archives, visit the website, which has everything.
Geeknights is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike 2.5 license. This means you can do whatever you want with it as long as you give us credit, don't make money, and share it in kind. Geeknights is recorded live with no studio and no audience. But unlike those other late shows, it's actually recorded at night.